Well, good afternoon and welcome to Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase. This is your weekly call-in town hall and radio show, and I'll be on the air for the next hour to answer your questions right here on WNTW. The number here is 804-454-1366. That's 804-454-1366. And you can actually tune in here each Friday as we have your weekly call-in town hall and radio show. I'm State Senator Amanda Chase, and I represent you all in the General Assembly. The district that I represent includes all of Amelia, all of Colonial Heights, and most of Chesterfield. And it's been a very busy week in the General Assembly. And as you know, if you all listened in the news this week, quite a bit of news happened this week. The big news this week is that despite the fight put up by 17 of us, 17 of the 21 Virginia Republican senators on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week, there were 4 Republican state senators who defected and voted with Senate Democrats, basically breaking the dam that was holding back Medicaid expansion in Virginia. Boy, it was really disappointing, too, let me tell you. Wasn't real happy about that. With such a slim 21-19 margin in the Virginia Senate, every vote counted, as you all know that. Well, Virginia has now passed in my opinion, one of the most fiscally reckless and irresponsible budgets in Virginia's history, and ultimately increasing spending by more than 11%. 11%. I want that to sink in for a minute. That is the greatest growth in state government spending this century. Now, as has been widely reported, the approved budget, it includes Obamacare's Medicaid scheme, and right, we've been talking about that, making Virginia the first state to expand Obamacare since President Obama left office over 16 months ago. To cover the state's portion of the expense of the expansion, there is now a new $600 million tax on hospitals. And by the way, that is twice what the governor proposed during regular session. And it was also included in the budget that was approved. Despite this new tax, calculations by the Senate Finance Committee staff indicate that Virginia's for-profit hospitals will actually increase their bottom lines by $1 billion under the scheme. As with virtually all taxes, you know who the expense is going to be passed on, right? Who's it going to go to? It's going to go to us, you and I, those that use the hospital. Now, those of you who are fans of big government, and I guess there are a couple of you that are out there probably will love the budget. When you increase spending this much, there is a lot to spread around. And if you've watched the TV and the radio ads recently, those who supported this budget have been busy touting all the benefits of higher government spending. So from a bigger government to an ample supply of pork and earmarks, this budget undoubtedly has something for everyone. Of course it does, right? But that spending is likely not sustainable beyond this budget. And we know that because we've been warned. We've been warned by Mick Mulvaney. We had former U.S. Senator Rick Santorum in Richmond this past Wednesday, and he came to our Republican caucus and warned us about the unsustainability of this plan and said, you know what? If you states continue to expand Medicaid, we're going to have to pull the plug from all this because the federal government can't afford to continue to do this. Now, here's something interesting. Medicaid, did you know this? Medicaid is already the fastest growing expense of the state government. And I know you know that because you listen every week, and we've talked about this. But in just 10 years, it has grown, Medicaid meaning, has grown from 14% of Virginia's general fund expenditures to 23%, where it is currently. Now, keep in mind, that's before we even expand Medicaid, right? And since the general fund also pays for core functions of government, so core government services like schools and public safety, Medicaid is continuing to crowd out funding for those other services. And that's why you hear what you did a couple weeks ago when the state of Louisiana, their regular Medicaid plan could no longer pay for those who are in nursing homes. They were kicked out. And we're not talking about, I mean, yes, they did expand Medicaid, but we're talking about their regular budget. They couldn't pay for it anymore because what happens is when you expand Medicaid, okay, we're almost at 25% now, so you have 75% of the budget left to pay for your core functions of government. The more that increases, what happens to everything else? It decreases. It decreases the amount that you have to spend on education and schools and all these other things. And now I know what somebody's saying out there. They're saying, but you're getting all this federal money, right? Let's just talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about that federal money that they say that, that we're leaving on the table and that other states are taking that money. We'll be the 33rd state to expand Medicaid. What's happened in the other 32 states? Well, typically what happens is we end up with higher taxation to pay for the other core functions of government. It never works out. You have more people that sign up for the program than they expect. There's not a cap on it because remember, it's an entitlement. And not only that, but remember we're talking about the cost of health care is continuing to go through the roof exponentially. Nothing has been done legislatively this year. My bill would have done something about it. The health care transparency bill would have done something, but that bill was rejected. So now we have nothing to put a cap on the cost. Nothing at all was not addressed. So those costs are going to continue to go up. So the per person cost of all these people that are signing up for Medicaid is going to go through the roof. And I'm telling you, just like these other states, we're not going to be able to afford it. And what happens when the state government gets on a bond? Remember, they have to balance their budget. This is not the federal government where they can raise your the debt ceiling. Instead, what they do is they do one of two things. They increase your taxes or they cut your services. So I'm just telling you, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. They say it'll take about 6 months to get Medicaid expansion in place in Virginia. And anyway, other states that have expanded Medicaid, as we said, are already experiencing this phenomenon. And, that's one of the reasons why several states we've heard about the teacher strikes this year. And as the legislatures learned that Obamacare's promise of free money to expand Medicaid isn't quite as free as they had hoped, it all comes home, right? So in its efforts to rein in federal spending, the Trump administration has targeted funding for Medicaid expansion to be phased out. And, I'd mentioned earlier this week on Wednesday, we had former U.S. Senator Rick Santorum to come along with Trump surrogate, Leon Benjamin, who's been on this program before. And they spoke to us and they warned us. They said the Trump administration has targeted funding for Medicaid expansion to be phased out, encouraging us to stand the line, to hold the line and not expand Medicaid. But what happened? We had 4 Republican senators to go along with the Democrats in the Senate, and here we are. So while this situation does not bode well for Virginia's fiscal future, there are some immediate effects of this budget that you're going to be experiencing later this year. So I want to give you a heads up on this because I know everybody's trying to plan their budget with their families. How are we going to handle health care? So the budget plan approved, first of all, like I said, it does nothing to reduce Obamacare's high and growing health insurance premiums. It does nothing to address its exorbitant deductibles and out-of-pocket expenses. Most consumers, you need to brace yourselves for another hefty hike, just like this past year, fueled by Virginia's decision to fully implement Obamacare. Just wait, it's going to happen. Well, since Governor Northam vetoed Senate Republican legislation this year that would have given consumers more affordable health options, Virginians will have to look to the federal government for relief from Obamacare's costly, same size for all health insurance policies. And guess what? Of those $600 million in new taxes, they're going to have to be paid too. And that means there's going to be no relief from the cost of health care, sadly. So like many of you, I'm upset, I'm angry, I'm disappointed in the direction that we're taking our once fiscally conservative state. And this is nowhere close to the result that I wanted for Virginia, which is why I'm among the 17 senators, all Republican, who voted against this plan. We're going to talk more about what to expect now that Medicaid expansion has been passed. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with Cut to the Chase. Good afternoon and welcome back to Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase. This is your weekly call-in town hall and radio show. I'm State Senator Amanda Chase here to take your calls. The number here is 804-454-1366, 804-454-1366. I'd love to get your thoughts on the issues that affect Virginians. And, right now, because we've had a big week in the General Assembly, we are really talking about the state budget. And, budgets sound really boring, but when you talk about how much money you're going to get back, after you pay taxes and that type of thing, it's important. My youngest son just got his tax bill, and, we've got our lawn cutting service that my boys run with my husband, and they each had to pay their taxes. And they just each individually got to see how much they were going to have to pay. And my youngest son paid $400. And he was pretty upset about paying the $400 because he knew how many lawns he had to cut to get to $400. And he said, Mom, he said, how is it I'm supposed to stay motivated to work? This is $400. That's like 10 yards, right? And I said, honey, now you understand for the first time why I do what I do, because that's, as small business owners, my husband and I've had a number of businesses since we've been married, payroll companies, computer businesses, what have you. And, we are taking the will of people away to want to work whenever they work so hard and they get less and less of their paycheck that they get to keep and spend on their family. The more we expand the size of government, the more we're going to have to spend, the more it's going to cost, right? And who's going to pay that? Who is the government, after all? It's you. Every time we expand a service, every time we expand a program, you, the taxpayer, you're the ones that are going to pay for that. A lot of people say, well, the government will take care of that. Well, whenever you talk about the government, that's you, the taxpayer. And so my son, who is 16, he gets it. He gets it. He understands that it is, first of all, it's demotivating for our young people when they're getting that paycheck back and they're seeing less and less. They're working so hard. My boys work hard mowing grass. It'll be 90, 100 degrees outside, and they are working, doing mulch jobs, and a lot of hard manual labor. And when they see how much money they get back after taxes, we want to motivate our young people to work. And I'm not being unsympathetic to people that have legitimate needs. I believe Medicaid is there, and it should be used the way it was originally designed, to help people who can't work, to help those who have intellectual and severe physical disabilities, and they can't work. They just can't. Okay? I feel like the churches should step up. That, in my opinion, is the role of the church, to help the needy and all that. But unfortunately, sometimes the churches don't step up like they should. So, I've said, okay, so we have Medicaid, should be a safety net. But if you're working and you have the ability to work, we're asking other people to pay for your health insurance. That is, and I know a lot of people are like, well, that should be a core basic right, to health insurance. Well, let me just tell you, remember, health insurance does not guarantee health care. Those are two very different things. health care versus health insurance. Well, I'm upset that some Republicans in the House and the Senate did not hold the line and keep the campaign promises that they ran on when they had the opportunity to support a more conservative Senate budget that was offered and rejected even on multiple occasions. I mean, even when we went back into special session, when we went back into, you remember we took the bill right from the Senate Finance Committee. The bill that was reported out of there was basically the Senate bill. That was the skinny bill without the Medicaid in it, without the hospital tax in it. And in fact, they added the Hyde Amendment in there, which was good because we don't want the state paying for abortions. But they had the option on multiple occasions to support this conservative Senate budget, which was by far more balanced, more conservative, more fiscally responsible, without expanding taxes and Medicaid, using our current revenues that we have from the state. Didn't use the federal, what they call enhanced dollars. Anytime you hear the buzzword enhanced dollars, they're referring to Medicaid expansion. And for those of you who are interested and want to get in the weeds, 138% of federal poverty level, that is actually considered Medicaid. That's how they define Medicaid, or 9 to 1. So every $9 the federal government puts up, the state has to put up $1. So it's 9 for 1, okay? But here's the catch. We say non-federal dollars, but do you know what that federal dollar is? It's debt. And we're already at, $23 trillion in debt? That's not money that's going to other states. That's debt. That's our kids' futures. Somebody's gonna have to pay for that someday. You know, I'm more concerned about us having so much debt that other countries take us over, like China. I mean, it could happen. What if they all call in their debt and say, pay up? It could happen. So even the state budget, okay, so let's just talk about the state budget, which was an option on the table. But even the Senate budget, it include increased funding for our public schools and our state-supported colleges and universities, which personally I think we could do some trimming of those universities. We need to focus more on putting dollars on getting kids to be able to go to colleges instead of building these huge Taj Mahals and athletic teams. We need to focus on education. It provides essentially increases for public safety, which we desperately need. I can't tell you the number of localities who are struggling to keep police officers even on the street because they're barely, they're competing locality, and even at the state level, to have comparable pay. I mean, they don't make that much money. But I think that we do need to increase pay for our public safety. And then also there was money in there for health and mental health care too. And we've talked about the STEP program that's available for those who need it. And that's available through the community service boards, people that have addiction issues and those types of things. So if even featured pay raises for public school teachers, state employees, and state-supported local employees like sheriff's deputies using existing surpluses. Remember, we had that extra surplus that we were talking about. I think it was $600 million. We figured out a way, and that's what the amendments were when we were in the Senate Finance Committee, adding those raises. So the budget approved by the Senate Finance Committee, it made substantial deposits to the state's rainy day fund, which was actually pretty low. And they set aside more for cash reserves, which that's basically going to improve Virginia's fiscal stability and help preserve our AAA bond rating, which is important. So the Senate's budget plan met all those priorities without raising taxes. Overall, the budget approved by the committee would have increased spending by nearly 7% over the budget under which the Commonwealth is currently operating. And while I don't support increasing annual spending I mean, even 7%. We need to figure out what do we need to do to cut. I mean, we should just stay level or start cutting, right? But I really do not support what the House and the governor and now 4 Republicans have done to our budget. It's just beyond me. In previous years, that would be considered a generous increase to get a 7% increase, which I really would not support that. When we come back, we're going to talk about a generous increase that wasn't enough for the Senate plan to win approval. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back with Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase. Welcome back to Cut to the Chase with State Senator Amanda Chase. I'm your weekly call-in town hall and radio show host, and I'll be on the air for the next 30 minutes. And if you have a question you'd like to ask about the budget or a comment you'd like to make, I'd like to offer you that opportunity to call in. The number here is 804-454-1366. That's 804-454-1366. And I really want to thank WNTW for the opportunity to provide this free public service to you each week. It's a unique opportunity for you, and I hope you'll take advantage of it. So, and I'm actually not paid to do this show. I do it because I think it's important to stay connected to the people that I serve and to stay accountable to you all. You are the boss, right? So let's just talk about what's in the current Medicaid budget. Since I'm just trying to get over why we didn't support the Senate budget, I'm still trying to get over that, and I just haven't gotten there yet, so y'all bear with me. But the current Medicaid budget includes this. It includes a $600 million in tax increases that hospitals are going to pass on to the consumer. It places all the negotiating power over Medicaid work requirements in the hands of the governor without any legislative oversight. You know, if you look at the language in the budget, it basically says that they have to apply for this waiver for the work requirement, but it never says they actually have to get that. As long as they apply for it, they've done all they need to do. That's pretty scary. It also includes millions of dollars in what I call cronyism. The government should not be handing over special favors to the best lobbyists. I think that's wrong. You know, a lot of the hospitals really like this. I mean, they're going to get money. You know, I had some people, commenting on Facebook and everything. Well, my spouse or whatever is a hospital administrator and they think this is a good idea. Well, of course they do. Of course they think this is a good idea because it's more money for the hospitals. Of course they like that. But it also has no fail-safe that if the waivers for work requirements are rejected, that we don't get straight out Obamacare's Medicaid expansion. We could end up with the most liberal plan of Obamacare of all 32 states. I mean, that's what we're looking at here. It also includes no amendments to ensure Obamacare's Medicaid expansion will not be used to fund the abortion industry. Your taxpayer dollars are subsidizing Planned Parenthood, which donates millions of dollars a year to liberal Democrats. All the evidence we have points to this program failing and the very people it's intended to help. You know, virtually every state that has passed Medicaid expansion like this since Obamacare's beginnings has seen the sinking ship wreck their budget. And now state legislatures across the country are considering either they're going to have to raise their taxes or further disenfranchising those living at the poverty level. And then we've also talked about the budget cuts in other areas, education, transportation, those things that we rely on to get to work. Remember when your car disappeared, if you ever had to drive into downtown Richmond during the wintertime and all those huge potholes and transportation is important. We need to focus on the core functions of government and actually delivered a speech on the floor. You know, I have to be honest with you. I'm not somebody that really likes to speak on the floor of the Senate. I don't mind in committees, but something is very intimidating about that that room where all the founding fathers have spoken and everything. And it takes me getting angry to speak out on the floor. And I did it twice on Wednesday. I was really fired up, to say the least. And one of the things that concerns me is that people continue to say that we have to be compassionate. Let me just tell you, it is not a compassionate thing to pass this. You look at you're looking at the short term. Those of you who are saying, well, we need to be compassionate, I think you are not looking at the whole picture here. Because what's not compassionate is whenever you take advantage of these services and you have no way to pay for it. That's called irresponsible. There are other things that we can do. We have healthcare clinics. We've talked about the community service boards that are available to help people. We have clinics. We do have the emergency rooms. Everybody has healthcare. Everybody, anybody, they are by law required to go to an emergency room. And yes, it is more expensive, but it's there. And I would tell you that it's going to be more expensive to go the route that we're heading and what we passed than it is anything with allowing people to use the emergency rooms. So virtually every state that has passed Medicaid expansion like this since Obamacare's beginnings, it's wrecked their budget. It's blown a hole right in it. And let's just talk about this. Let's talk about what's happened. So what's going to happen next? So Governor Ralph Northam is expected to sign a pair of budget bills early next week, and that includes expanding Virginia's Medicaid program under the Affordable Care Act. And then the next thing that's going to happen, and I thought this was very interesting, that the lawmakers and the state officials, they didn't include money in the new 2-year budget to raise Medicaid reimbursement rates for doctors and other frontline healthcare providers. Did they just forget that? That didn't make any sense. Medicaid expansion is going to rely on $2.5 billion in federal funding, which represents no less than 90% of the cost, and more than $306 million from a provider assessment paid by hospitals to cover the state's remaining share. And it's also going to include a second assessment on hospital revenues that are going to raise the Medicaid reimbursement for inpatient and outpatient hospital care. But guess what? That higher reimbursement rate is not going to apply to doctors, nurse practitioners, or others who will bill Medicaid separately. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Lately, I've been losing sleep.
Welcome back to Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase. This is your weekly call-in town hall and radio show. And I will be on the air for the next 15 minutes or so if you want to try to get your call in. I'd love to get your thoughts on the issues that affect Virginians here. And the number here is 804-454-1366, 804-454-1366. I'd love to take your call. We've only got 15 minutes left. So if you're anticipating calling in, go ahead, and I would do that right now. This is my first term in office, and I'm getting ready to complete my second year. I actually have to run next year for office to run in 2019. And, so I am doing exactly what I told you all I would do. I was not going to support Medicaid expansion. I've done my research. I've done my homework, and I have fought hard to make sure we don't get this. I have Joe, who is on the line, and he has a question about, I think you say Medicare. Is that Medicare or Medicaid, Joe?
Well, this latest expansion that you're so upset about, the Republicans who decided to cave in on this, they're making some kind of political calculation. What do they think that they gain out of doing this? Do they think they'll get reelected by throwing in with the governor and expanding Medicare, Medicaid, or whatever it is?
Joe, I am just as disappointed in you as you are, and I've been trying to put my head around this and figure it out. And the only thing I can come to, I know they're very compassionate, they're very good people, the four of them. But, sometimes you have to say no, and doing the right thing is saying no. And I think, sometimes people will say, especially when you see people who are in need, and they do come into our office and they're like, we're in need. They think Medicaid expansion is the answer. But as you know, when you do your homework, because I know you probably tune in to Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase every week, and you're educated and you understand why this is not a compassionate solution for people.
No, what I'm saying is I think it's a political calculation, and I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Why did the House Speaker do the same thing? I don't understand how they think that they will gain politically by doing this.
Well, I know that there are people in each of those 4 districts that I've seen, just in social media, that they have said, that they're going to end up with a primary challenger because their base, the people who elected them there, elected them with the understanding that they were going to fight Medicaid expansion.
And the House Speaker in particular.
Right. And, and I love Speaker Cox. He's a good man. He's a man of integrity. And, I've asked him myself, and he'll have to, talk. I don't want to, put words into his mouth or anything, but, I think we all had a decision to make. And I think, you have to choose whether to go with your base because that's what you ran on. But I think after that November election, I think they were terrified. I mean, I know Speaker Cox went door to door all over the state. As a speaker, you go all over the state with all the other delegates across the state, and you're, advocating and campaigning with those people. And to work as hard as they worked and to lose so many in the House of Delegates, I think they thought, healthcare is the number one issue, and people must want Medicaid expansion. I think they were upset with President Trump, who I actually think is doing a good job. But I think they are thinking that the reason that they were throwing darts is because of the Medicaid expansion. I think it was more directed at Trump. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. That's why I was calling. It doesn't make sense to me that they're not going to get more support. There are not going to be a whole bunch of Democrats that are going to, start voting Republican because the Republicans caved.
Right.
It seems like a foolish political decision to me. It seems like they've ensured that they won't be successful at the ballot box.
Right. I agree with you. I think it's a little bit disillusioned, but I really appreciate your call, and I'm going to continue to reach out to the 4 of them and see if they'll be willing to come on the show. We can ask them ourselves, what were you thinking? I know Frank Wagner would probably say he's got a changing district. He feels his is more Democratic, but, I'm at the point where this is what I ran on. And if that's no longer popular, then you just have to vote me out of office, because I feel like that would be disingenuous to run on one thing and then vote something else.
Right.
It's kind of like if you want... Yeah, go ahead.
Didn't the House Speaker, wasn't part of his rationalization that he was going to add a work requirement? And it sounds like that is just kind of a paper tiger, that it's not a real work requirement now. You're
right. In fact, we even the governor said it was a work suggestion because it was volunteer hours. There was no accountability. It was an honor system for the work requirement. We know people are going to take advantage of that.
So he caved, and he didn't get the main thing that he said he was going to get by doing this.
Right. I couldn't agree with you more. Well, listen, Joe, thanks so much for calling. I have Rena, and we're going to try to fit her call in. Thank you, Joe, for calling in. And Rena, thanks for calling in.
Yes. I actually have a couple of questions. I'm kind of new to getting involved in politics, but I really would like to know if there's any way for us to see a copy of the budget that actually passed.
Yes. So let me tell you, I'm so glad you called in, Rena. So everybody write this down. I want you to go to, spell it all out, virginiageneralassembly.gov. And that has your answer for everything. It's virginiageneralassembly.gov. And on there, you can actually see a copy of the budget. You can see a copy of the bills. It has a whole list of all the legislators. There's a little tutorial on there that explains kind of how bills are passed. It is a great, great resource. And I would encourage you all to go and look at that. And I might just spend a whole segment just on tutoring people on how to use the Virginia General Assembly website, because I think it's important to inform you all on how to keep us accountable. I'm not a politician. I got in here to try to make things easier so everyday citizens could understand how to use the system and hold their elected officials accountable, and I'm here. So
Okay.
I want y'all to learn how to use it.
I'm sorry. I have another question, though,
Yes.
regarding that, because I actually have looked on the site.
Okay.
So where do I go to see the budget, though, when I'm on the General Assembly website?
Okay, well, let me just go there myself. I have my phone here, so I'm going to try to pull it up.
And I would like to view that health care transparency bill that you said that you proposed, but I've tried to look it up and I couldn't find it. So what is the bill number?
Okay, so what you can do, you can go to the Virginia General Assembly. Okay, I'm on there now, and it says Members in Session. If you look on the left-hand side, there's a tab that says Members in Session, Virginia State Capitol, Virginia Legislature, Law and Resources. The next budget is state budget.
Okay.
So you'll want to click on that. It also says Capitol Classroom. So it'll actually teach you everything you want to know. There's also, as you can see, a schedule of when our meetings are coming up at the Capitol. Okay, so to answer your question, where is the bill? What you can do is you can click on Members in Session, because you want to, find what bills I have on there. And once you click on that, you're going to go to Senate member listings. Senate member listings. And yes, there is a list of all 40 of our state senators there. And if I go in and click on my name, Amanda F. Chase, it's going to list out all the bills that I was chief patron of, chief co-patron, and co-patron. And then you can also see the committees I serve on, my biography.
So it's actually under your name.
Yes,
then.
yes.
So what bills you've proposed would be
right.
there.
That's exactly right. And they're all in there. And it was one that I was a chief patron on, and there's a whole list of them on there. Let's see if I can find it. Healthcare transparency. It's really small. Is it 721, I think, for patients? Yes, 721. Senate Bill 721 is the Healthcare Services Bill, where practitioners are to provide to patient payment estimates.
Okay, so it's SB 721 then?
You got it.
Okay. I'm a little familiar with it, but,
you're doing great.
Learn, so.
Well, I am happy to help, and y'all call in and ask these questions. I love that. And I will tell you what I've done is the bill did not make it out of subcommittee, but what I agreed to is that I would give them a year. What we're doing is we've written a letter to Dr. Brown, who is going to send out a letter to all the healthcare providers saying that under current law, healthcare providers can actually provide you an estimated cost of services, and a lot of them think it's illegal, but it's not. And so we want to encourage them to do that. And so what we're doing, we're still going back and forth on getting that letter right, because I want them to post that in a visible place so that when you go to sit down to make a payment to pay for your visit for the day, you can look up and you can see a sign that says that you may ask for a estimated cost of service. So that's my goal. Because once we shed some light on how much healthcare costs, then we can start exposing, we can create some competition. So anyway, Lena, is it Rena or Rena?
It's Rena.
Rena,
yeah.
Thank you so much for calling in today. We are getting ready to go to a break. Did you want to stay on? Did you have another question?
I just have one more.
Okay.
I have tons, but this is the last one. Is there any way to get a transcript of today's talk?
Yes, I'm so glad you asked. You can go to chaseforsenate.com and click on radio show. In fact, all of my radio shows are on there. So we'll be right back. Can't believe we're already on the final segment of Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase. And, I really appreciate Joe and Rena for calling in today. And unfortunately, we don't have more time for phone calls today. But, of course, we'll be back next Friday. And, of course, if you have other questions, Rena, or anyone else, feel free to email my office. You can actually go to my website, chaseforsenate.com, and that's the number 4, Senate. All my contact information is there, and I assume most of you are probably driving home or going out to dinner. But you can just Google Senator Amanda Chase, and you will be able to find my contact information. Email me, and I will do my best to answer your question. So we are on the final segment here, and there are a couple things that I thought were really interesting that I just wanted to cover here real quick. This whole thing about the Medicaid reimbursement for, we do have the reimbursement for the inpatient and the outpatient hospital care, but this higher reimbursement rate won't apply to the doctors, the nurse practitioners, or others who bill Medicaid separately for the care they provide. And, that's part of the problem. That's the problem that we have with current Medicaid, because even though it's offered, doctors are not getting reimbursed the full amount. It's 67 cents on the dollar. That's what they're paid now. And so they're looking to increase that to 88% of the cost. And that's going to cost about $47 million in the second year to raise those those reimbursements. And so, if you're a doctor and you have a private practice and, you have to pay off your medical bills, it's not cheap to become a doctor. I know this. My daughter's boyfriend is in med school right now. It is not expensive. It's extremely expensive, and you don't have a lot of time. You cannot even hold a job while you're in med school. My daughter's in PA school, and you're not allowed to hold a job when you're doing that either. You have to devote yourself completely to becoming a doctor or becoming a PA. And so they put a lot of time, energy, and effort and money. And so, they finally get a chance to pay off their school loans and their debts and that type of thing. And, the more Medicaid patients you take in, the less money you're going to get. I mean, right now it's 67 cents on the dollar as opposed to, the full amount you'd be able to charge. So that's a problem. That is a problem. And it's interesting. I thought that, Ralston King, who is the Vice President of Government Relations for the Medical Society of Virginia and supports Medicaid expansion, said he supports it as long as it includes higher reimbursement rates for physicians who are now paid 67 cents on the dollar for treating patients in the program. And so, if we don't have a funding issue, then we have a problem. So it is a critical part of expanding access for care for uninsured Virginians. We have to reimburse the doctors. Otherwise, you don't have the providers. And if you don't have the providers, then you don't have the care. And that's when you get the long lines, when doctors have to limit the number of Medicaid patients that they're able to take in because they got to make a living too. They can't just do full out Medicaid expansion. Medicaid patients. I had a friend that owns a oxygen supply company, and he basically 90% of his business was Medicaid. And they're not, they continued to reduce the amount of money they'd reimburse him. And now, he was going to end up going out of business. So, you can't sustain your business on Medicaid alone. You have to have people that actually pay 100% to offset the amount that they're not going to be getting in. So, anyway, wow, I can't believe our time is already up. Wow, time has flown today. Well, listen, thank you again for joining us today on Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase here on WNTW The Answer. I hope you will join us again next Friday for our weekly town hall, actually your weekly town hall and radio show, where we answer your questions, get your input, and address issues that are important to you. So stay tuned next Friday. Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase.